Hey guys, Brandon Gomez here, back again with another video, and it's our first paint scheme video of the year. Welcome to rating every confirmed 2023 NASCAR Cup Series paint scheme, Part 1. Part 1 because there is without a doubt going to be more paint schemes revealed in the coming weeks. So, I'll be rating every new scheme that'll be unveiled up until the Daytona 500. So, stay tuned for those videos coming in the coming weeks. Before I start the video proper, I just want to address the fact that some teams opted not to change their paint schemes for the 2023 season, and my ratings for those schemes remain unchanged. So, let's go through them real quick. Austin Cindric's discount tire paint scheme remains a 7 out of 10. Kevin Harvick's Ream scheme remains a 7 out of 10. Kevin Harvick's Busch Light paint scheme remains a 10 out of 10. Kyle Larson's HendrickCars.com scheme remains a 7 out of 10. Eric Almirola's Smithfield paint scheme remains a 10 out of 10. Denny Hamlin's FedEx scheme remains a 7 out of 10. Ryan Blaney's Black and Yellow Menard scheme remains a 5 out of 10. Ryan Blaney's Discount Tire scheme is a 7 out of 10. I never rated it at all last year, but it's the same scheme as Austin Cindric's Discount Tire scheme, so I'll give it the same rating. Martin Truex Jr.'s Auto Owner scheme remains a 6 out of 10. Christopher Bell's Ream scheme remains a 7 out of 10. Joey Logano's Shell Pennzoil scheme remains a 0 out of 10. And Josh Bilicki's Ziegler paint scheme remains a 6 out of 10. Now that we've got all the unchanged paint schemes out of the way, we can start rating the new paint schemes. Without further ado, let's get into it. To start off, we have Ross Chastain's Kubota paint scheme. This scheme has a nice mix of black and Dayglow orange. The two colors go really well together, and this is an all-around decent scheme. 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Kevin Harvick's Hunt Brothers Pizza paint scheme. For once, I don't have any complaints about it, because from the looks of it, the hood is green. On last year's scheme, it was white, and it made the paint scheme look bad. But on this render, for the 2023 scheme, it looks like they changed the hood color from white to green. And it makes this paint scheme 10 times better. Although it would have been nice if they had made the permanent switch to the all-red scheme. But changing the hood color is a good compromise. 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Brad Keselowski's Next Lizette paint scheme. I don't really like this one that much. It's got a white base color with dark pink and light yellow designs. I think it'd look better if it had more dark pink and light yellow, but it's mostly white, and it just doesn't look good to me. RFK usually has really great paint schemes. This isn't one of them. 4 out of 10. Next up, we have Brad Keselowski's Elk Grove manufacturing paint scheme that he'll be running at the Chicago Street Race. I like the design that it's got going down the side with the red and the two shades of blue. It fades to white at the front tire and then fades back to normal near the front grille. I feel like the scheme would be better if that design just never faded at all and remained solid around the whole car. I don't know why they designed it like that, but it brings the quality of the scheme down for me. 5 out of 10. Next up, we have Corey LaJoie's Team Negu Never Ever Give Up, Encouraging Kids Fighting Cancer paint scheme. The design is great, and it supports a good cause. Not much else I have to say about it. 10 out of 10. Next up, we have Kyle Busch's Lenovo paint scheme. I like the little staircase design it's got going down the side that separates the associate sponsors from the Lenovo logos. I like that touch. It's got a good blend of black and red, with a little bit of white tossed in. Great paint scheme. 7 out of 10. Next up, we have Kyle Busch's BetMGM paint scheme. The most interesting thing to me about this paint scheme is that it's got beige on it. You don't really see a lot of beige on paint schemes that often, but it's featured on this paint scheme, and it blends really well with the black, and they make for a decent scheme. 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Kyle Busch's Allsco Uniforms paint scheme. This is an interesting one to me because usually the Allsco schemes are mostly green, but this one is half black, half green. Not to say that it's bad, I'm just saying it's interesting. The black and green blend well together, and they make a decent scheme. 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Kyle Busch's Cheddar's paint scheme. I like this one a lot. It's got black on the top and bottom, with dark orange going around the front, sides, and back of the car. And on the rear quarter panels, it's got croissants, and croissant designs on the roof. I like this paint scheme a lot. It's great. 8 out of 10. Next up, we have Chase Elliott's Napa Auto Parts paint scheme. This looks better than last year's scheme. I like it a lot. 7 out of 10. Next up, we have Ryan Blaney's Wabash paint scheme. This has a blue color gradient with yellow highlights. I dig this paint scheme a little. Looks decent. 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Chris Buescher's Fifth Third Bank paint scheme. Unchanged from last year's. It's still got the white front with the teal to turquoise to blue color gradient. I'm not sure how to feel about this one. It doesn't look good to me, but it doesn't look bad to me either. I wish they could have kept the 2017 to 2021 paint scheme. That one looked really good. This one, I'm not sure. Neither good nor bad. 5 out of 10. Next up, we have Chris Buescher's Nexletol paint scheme. This one is mostly white with dark pink and baby blue designs on it. This paint scheme has the same problem as Brad Keselowski's Nexalet paint scheme. It's got too much white. 4 out of 10. Next up, we have Chris Buescher's Palacasino paint scheme. Interesting design on this one. It's mostly gray with a purple to dark pink color gradient, with some black thrown in. Not sure how to feel about this one. I do like the purple to dark pink, or is that hot pink? I don't know. I like that color gradient. And honestly, the paint scheme would be better if it just had that purple to pink color gradient and nothing else. But it doesn't. So 5 out of 10. Next up, we have Chris Buescher's Palacasino paint scheme that he'll be running at Fontana. This one looks better than his other Palacasino paint scheme. I like this one. The black, the yellow, and orange go pretty well together, and they make a decent paint scheme. 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Chris Buescher's Fastenal paint scheme. I don't like it very much. It's just blue with hexagon designs on it. That's it. Last year's paint scheme was way better than whatever this is. Why did RFK change it? Why? 3 out of 10. Next up, we have Martin Truex Jr.'s Bass Pro Shops Tracker Boats and ATVs paint scheme. I like this one a lot. It's got a camo design with yellow and dayglow orange trim and a little bit of gray tossed in. This looks way better than last year's paint scheme. I love it. 10 out of 10. Next up, we have Harrison Burton's Ford Motorcraft paint scheme. At first glance, this looks like the same scheme as last year's, but it's not. Last year's paint scheme had the red extend all the way to the front bumper, but on this year's scheme, the red extends to just the hood. And I feel like that was a necessary change. Makes the scheme look a lot cleaner. 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Joey Logano's AAA Southern California paint scheme. This looks bad. It's mostly white with a little bit of blue at the front wheel well, and then a skinny blue stripe going down the side of the car. That's it. This looks bad. 2 out of 10. Next up, we have Joey Logano's Auto Trader paint scheme. It's got a decent design, but the colors are in the wrong places. The orange scheme is way better. I don't know why Penske is making Cindric and Logano run different colored Auto Trader paint schemes, because they had no problem letting them run identical paint schemes in the past. But that's what they want to do. And I don't like that. So, 5 out of 10. Next up, we have William Byron's Liberty University paint scheme. This may look like the same scheme as last year's, but it isn't. Last year's paint scheme had more flames on it, and just said Liberty on the side. This year's paint scheme has less flames and says Liberty University on the side. And it looks worse than last year's. 4 out of 10. Next up, we have William Byron's Raptor paint scheme. This looks a lot better than last year's. Last year's was a monstrosity. It was terrible. This one looks way better. 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Michael McDowell's Freight Auctions paint scheme. This looks similar to last year's, but it's different. Last year's had white all around the car. This one has black designs at the back. And it's a decent upgrade. 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Ricky Stenhouse Jr.'s Kroger Cottonelle paint scheme. This looks really good. I like it. It's miles better than most of the JTG Doherty paint schemes from last year, because it actually has a good color combination. One problem with this scheme, though. The Kroger logo is way too low on the hood. That was one of the two main problems with the JTG Doherty schemes from last year. The Kroger logo was way too low on the hood. I don't know why they have it like that. It's really easy to center a logo on the hood, but for some reason, they just choose not to do that. And without that infraction, this paint scheme would be an 8 out of 10. But because of the placement of the logo, it brings it down to a 6 out of 10. Next up, we have Alex Bowman's Ally paint scheme, the day version. Oh my goodness. This looks way better than the monstrosity that was last year's paint scheme. Last year's paint scheme was god-awful. This year's paint scheme is a godsend. It's beautiful. 10 out of 10. Next up, we have Alex Bowman's Ally paint scheme, the night version. A lot of people are saying that this is better than the day version, but I disagree. It looks good, but it's not as good as the day version. 8 out of 10. Next up, we have BJ McLeod's Blaster paint scheme. This one looks really good. I like it. It's mostly red with black and yellow stripes going down the side of the car. It looks really good. 8 out of 10. And for our final paint scheme of part 1, we have Jimmy Johnson's Carvana paint scheme. This looks really good. I like it. It reminds me a lot of his IndyCar livery from 2021. It's good to see Jimmy Johnson back in NASCAR, and he's back with a great paint scheme. 10 out of 10. And that concludes part 1 of rating every confirmed 2023 NASCAR Cup Series paint scheme. What do you think? Do you think some of these should have been given a higher rating? Do you think some should have been given a lower rating? How would you rate these paint schemes? Let me know in the comments below. Before I cue the outro, I want to ask you guys a question. Should I rate the Xfinity and Truck Series schemes too? Let me know in the comments below. If you want to see more of me, be sure to follow me on Instagram and join my Discord server. Links to both are in the description down below. Leave a like on the video and subscribe to my channel for more motorsports content. Thank you all so much for watching. That's it from me.